episodes are talked about derogatorily, as though there's something to slog through until you get to the stuff that matters. Person of Interest's early first season, not uniquely, is full of groundwork-setting episodes that establish the norms and rules of the world and ease us into the characters. But they're not filler, and Cura to Ipsum certainly isn't. I always remember this one. The tone, the acting, the ending. It's also written by Denise Te, who will pen some of the best and some of my favorite episodes in the series. I'm really excited for this one. Let's get into it. This week's number is Megan Tillman, an extremely hardworking doctor played by a criminally small role for Linda Cardellini. She works 80 hours a week, is well-liked, and is instantly warm to undercover Finch. Trying to suss out who's after her, they find out she spends her few precious non-hospital hours at a nightclub. John follows her to the bar and notices she's being encroached on by an unfriendly stranger, which he rapidly takes care of. He also notices she's being followed by a man they saw earlier, creepy banker Andrew Benton. A little digging reveals that he has strings of accusations of harassment, but no convictions. So Benton seems a likely perpetrator. In between all of this, we get the B-plot continuing from the previous episode. Carter visits Finch at his fake address and questions him about the events of the last episode, namely the interaction between bystander Finch and the undercover criminal John caught on camera.
Did you try to communicate with him in any other way?
So, yes, I was communicating with him. I was begging for my life.
I promise you, we will catch this guy.
Finch is a practiced liar and throws her off for the time being. Fusco gets some time in the spotlight as well, and we see another side to him as he plays with his son. Dirty cop chickens come to roost, and Fusco has to come up with money under threat of harm to his son. Fusco gets some info for John, who is pretty flippant at Fusco's request for protection.
Lots of crooked cops in this town, Lionel. Not gonna be hard to find another one just as useful as you.
We haven't gotten a lot of Fusco yet at this point, but seeing John brush him off the way he does make me feel for him. The B-plot with Fusco and his debts doesn't quite tonally mesh well with the rest of the episode, but it does give us some necessary progression of him and John's relationship. John and Finch's research reveals that Benton sexually assaulted her sister in college, who then took her own life soon after. Tillman considers him responsible for ruining her sister, and is determined to take him out. But the machine sent them Tillman's way, so it's possible the intent wasn't to get them to save Benton, but to intervene on Tillman's behalf. An actual good person. John follows Megan to a support group, and they have stilted, if empathetic, conversation.
Just wanted some coffee.
This coffee's terrible.
He invites her to elaborate by sharing about his own losses, and I love the gentleness that John brings to his interactions with the numbers. After figuring out the specifics of Dr. Tillman's plan, John pipes up with a suggestion. He'll just do Tillman's job for her, ridding the world of Benton and preventing her from becoming a criminal. Easy peasy.
I'm gonna find a way to make Ben disappear.
Before resorting to extreme means, John tries to frame Benton for drug use, and he's quickly released from jail. Like the previous episodes, we get a perpetrator who relies on power and privilege, and they realize that conventional means of justice aren't going to work. But Tillman's plan is already in motion. She incapacitates Benton, wheels him into a truck, and sets out in the rain. She quickly stops at a diner for gas, and...
Remember me? Let me buy you a cup of coffee, Megan. Come on, I hear it's terrible. The guy you got tied up in the back of the van can wait.
John opens up here more than we've seen so far. He says that he knows what it means to take a life, that it's cost him some deep part of his humanity. And here we get the real climax of the episode, in that scene at the table, where Dr. Tillman hands over the keys to the van. Because, of course, it's not about saving Benton, it's that this isn't, evidently, who Megan Tillman is. The other crucial piece is that Tillman's desperate act is the result of knowing that the alleged justice system in place has not and will continue not to hold Benton responsible. So John does what John does, absorbs her pain, and elects himself arbiter of Benton's fate. John takes on a role here that we've definitely seen before, the doing what apparently good people can't, taking on things so that they don't have to.
Why do you do it, Finch? The machine, the numbers...
I told you, Mr. Reese. I have my reasons.
Before we get to the wonderful closing scene, let's talk a little bit about this episode's discussion about responsibility. A premeditated violent act is predicted. Who do you go after to stop it? Cura to Ipsum asks us what we're supposed to feel when the person they have to help is one that very arguably the world would be better off without. This is a question the show will come back to repeatedly, and the end doesn't give us an answer, largely because John himself doesn't have one yet. The final scene is fantastic, and still a piece of imagery that sticks in my head. The two men at the table, the bright blue sky, the gun, the violence that John believes they share between them. I love how unhinged John looks, almost ragged in the final scene, even though he and Benton aren't actually fighting. As cool an exterior as he can have sometimes, he's constantly on the edge of losing it.
But the truth is, people don't really change, do they?
But John doesn't really believe that. After all, even after pegging Fusco as a bad guy, he let him live because he thinks his heart wasn't really in it, and he's clearly trying to do good now in contrast to his previous work that he feels guilty for. The parallels for our ongoing Season 1 John character study are explicit. John directly compares himself to Benton. He and Benton break people while Megan Tillman fixes people. The episode also addresses John's belief in people's ability to change, which perhaps contributes to his cavalier attitude towards Fusco. If he doesn't believe he can change, he doesn't believe Benton can, or Fusco. As of now, Fusco is an asset in name only. He's a means to an end. But maybe there's a difference between a person doing harmful acts while following orders versus a predator like Benton seeking out the vulnerable with clear, malicious intent. John's intentions, however, are less clear, and we end the episode with the two men at an impasse, the gun still untouched, and the screen cuts to black. There's a lot of great detail in this one. I love how, in her plan to get revenge on Benton, the facade Dr. Tillman uses is one of care. She uses her medical knowledge to drug and incapacitate him, and transports him by pushing him in a wheelchair as though she's his caretaker. In this isolated dynamic, Tillman is the clear perpetrator, stalking, kidnapping, by pretending to be a victim to get closer access to him. But she's still sympathetic because her motivations are understandable, and even her conviction to carry through with her plan wavers with her morals. When John finds her in the diner, her hands are shaking, so we believe that she's a good person. It's a double subversion. The presumed perpetrator is actually the victim, and then the actual perpetrator is sympathetic and the recipient of the team's help. There's also questions about the ethics of revenge, and does it do more harm to the person on the acting or the receiving end of that revenge? Revenge on behalf of a loved one, in his eyes, may not actually bring all that much closure. The title is a reference to the biblical proverb, "Physician, cure thyself." Phrases to the same effect can also be found in Jewish and in Greek literature. It's sort of a pot calling the kettle black thing. Basically, deal with your own issues before you take on those of others. But it's also a little prod at the irony of human existence. Knowing how to heal others doesn't translate necessarily one-on-one to being able to do so for ourselves. The physician in question, Dr. Tillman, can't really cure herself of the psychological injuries she carries. The most she can do is make peace with reality and honor her sister's life. John is no physician, but he's also part of this equation. He sees himself as incurable. With this idea of doing what other people can't, John removes himself from the world again. He's the exception. He takes on their burdens. Believing he's already too far gone, he leans into it to at least put it to good use. I love these two fantastic mirrored shots where John almost becomes a conduit. He absorbs Tillman's pain, and then he gets to choose whether to redirect it towards Benton. So the question, of course, what did John do? It's entirely plausible that John would have sent Benton off with a threat. It's equally plausible that he would have just killed him without remorse. So whatever outcome we land on probably says more about us, how we feel the situation should be handled, and how we feel about John at this early point in time. For a fourth episode, it's surprisingly weighty, and I dig it a lot. It's moments like these that have me going, yeah, that's my show.